Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our workshop on feedback to the learner. My name is Alet Ninabe, and I will be hosting the session today. I'd like to start by explaining the different features on the control panel that you will need today. Should you experience any problems with your sound, you can click on the help button and it will give you an opportunity to check your sound. Then you'll see the mute button. You've been muted now because it's a webinar, but should you raise your hand during the Q&A session at the end, you will be unmuted and then you can ask your question. You'll also see the raise hand. You can lower your hand button. You can use this when you want to ask a question during the Q&A session at the end. And then lastly is the questions box where you can type your questions for the Q&A session. Only the organizer will be able to see your questions, not the whole entire group of people. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Almarie van Zyl. Welcome, Almarie.
Thank you very much, Alet. I'm really excited to be part of the webinar today.
Yes, we are fortunate. Yeah.
No, I think we should go right into this because they're not interested in me, but they are interested in the content that we are sharing this afternoon. Thank you, Alet, for introducing us to this virtual platform. I don't think people have to be scared because it's really a very user-friendly platform. But ladies and gentlemen, today we are looking at feedback, and what we are intending to achieve in the next hour is to define feedback, to look at the importance of it in this whole process of learning, teaching and learning, to identify the benefits to the different stakeholders, to identify the characteristics of feedback, and very important, to help you know how to plan feedback. Because I think this is one of the neglected steps in our teaching process within the school. Now, I think what's important, teachers may speak about feedback, but it's important to understand exactly what are we saying when we refer to feedback. Now, what I'm going to do, and this is really just for a brainstorming session to start off our webinar this afternoon, is to look at the different steps that are listed below. And for you then to decide how would you order them in a logical cycle of events. So for example, right at the bottom in blue, you will see, you could say 1, 3, 2, 5, 4. Let's give you a minute just to think, how would you rearrange action, analysis, feedback, plan, and evaluation so that it actually follows in a logical sequence of events in the cycle of teaching and learning. So let's see how you managed to do this. So when we look at the feedback cycle, it starts with planning. And after planning, there has to be action. And after action, we get to evaluation or assessment. Then we do analysis. And I'm sure that you know that the buzz in education at the moment is data analysis. And once we've done data analysis, we look at feedback. And this is the cycle that we were talking about. And I would have loved to interact with you if we had an in-person session to see how many of you actually managed to get this in the right order. So in education, this is the cycle that we use. And it must be complete for us to be able to say that there has been something qualitative that has taken place in the classroom. Now, those of you who've done research will know that we talk about qualitative research, and the emphasis is on quality. And I think often in education, we neglect the quality assurance. So feedback forms a critical part of quality assurance, as you can see here. And indeed, any cycle where we require information in order to start planning, to determine what the actions would be, etc., we will require feedback. And this brings us then to defining feedback. And I know there's a lot, and I'm not going to read from the slide because we can all read, but I think what's really important for me is to emphasize the fact that feedback is used to obtain information. So there's a process taking place. Then I am obtaining information to determine what is the progress that has taken place. Because there's a specific outcome in mind, whether it's passing the test or whether it's finalizing or finishing off a specific task. So can you see here, feedback is then giving us information. It's feeding back to a specific action so that there can be intervention or change if necessary. Now, you will see later on in our presentation today, we will also look at feed up and feed forward, but I'm going to leave that for a little bit later on. So we can see here, feedback provides scope for us for development at every level of that education cycle that we've just referred to. And what's important here, it should be regular and it should be focused. Otherwise, it really defeats the object. And that's why, in essence, we are saying feedback is a gift. It's a gift of time and energy. And I'm thinking of those hours we are spending grading papers for learners. It's a gift. I'm giving something of myself. Many of the participants this afternoon have been in education for a while. You have gained from the time in education. You have something to share. And that's why we are saying the intent is for growth. And what's crucial, it's for the person, not about the person, because then it can offend. So I am giving this feedback for someone to gain from it, to learn from it, and then to have something happening so that there is change. And that's why we are saying we are targeting success. If feedback in your classroom, in your school, is not a gift, we are spending time in vain, unfortunately. So we are not incriminating anyone here. We are aiming to achieve success. Now, we're going to look at a case study, and this case study is going to take us to Desert Park Primary School. And this school is facing a number of challenges. Now, I have duplicated the case study. I'm not going to read everything, but we are going to, and I would like to draw your attention to the highlighted sections because that's what we are going to look at. We're going to see how can we intervene? What sort of feedback are we getting and what actions can we then plan to change and to achieve the success that we have referred to? Now you can see it's quite a large primary school, but for me it's important to take note that we have two department heads. The one is for the foundation phase and Mr. Maloney is for the intercent phase. Now the second paragraph gives us the bragging rights. They believe that they are proactive when we talk about planning. Now think of our cycle, and we said we needed feedback before we can start planning. So they say that in October of each year, the phases conduct their SWOT, and then they sit together and they look at the outcomes of the SWOT analysis that they have done. We move to the next part. This is the logical outcome. After the SWOT, they discuss, they gather feedback from individuals, and the focus, of course, is curriculum, time allocation for different tasks. And remember, this is intercent. So we are talking about the learners moving on from the foundation phase and preparing themselves for the senior phase. So results of learner assessment is going to be crucial here. So then they set the goals, and then we have a large group meeting where they all come together, and now everybody gets an opportunity to provide the feedback from their different sessions. This is captured on the flip chart And now we have a plenary where we are going to look at the bigger picture. And this is where we want to just pause for a moment. And I'm going to read to you, please bear with me. In the latest strategic planning meeting, Mr. Maloney's phase teachers indicate that there are problematic gaps that have opened up between the phases since the NCS was implemented. He says that these gaps seem to be widening. Some of the specific gaps that teachers in his phase have identified are, and the one that we are interested in, learners in grade 4 seem to have learned no independent learning skills in grade 3. So they are coming into grade 3, into grade 4 from grade 3, and they are waiting to be spoon-fed. The last comment is that they are having difficulty to actually construct sentences. And you can imagine a paragraph would be a disaster then. So we are going to relook this specific feedback that we are getting from them, the gaps, and specifically no independent learning. And the top one, learners do not seem to know basic phonics when they reach grade 4. So you can imagine the spelling, because they are not used to the sounds. And then we hear something interesting, that many of these learners in the InterSen phase do not speak English, because up to grade 3 they have been taught in Setswana. And now in grade 4 they are taught in English. And they don't have that English proficiency to actually master the subjects in English. And that's why we are not surprised about the last one. There's a severe weakness in basic numeracy. So you can see what is important here, although we're not going to pay attention. One of the things that we can put in place here is to advise the grade 4 teachers to actually take these learners at the start of grade 4 and to slowly but surely cross this language barrier by code switching. And code switching means that they are speaking Setswana and then maybe repeat it in English, so that by the middle of the year in grade 4, they can scaffold the English language skills into their classes. But for the purpose of this afternoon, we are just going to look at the lack of basic phonics knowledge, as well as the inability to construct sentences. This is a very interesting one, because having been a principal of a secondary school, I can really relate to this. You know, it's this blame game. There is pressure from the surrounding secondary schools to make sure that by the end of grade 7, learners are completely ready to enter grade 8 and the high school context, where expectations of learners are escalated. But the teachers who teach grade 7 feel that there's too much of a backlog of skill and learning by the time the learners reach grade 7. So it's very difficult for the grade 7 teachers to play catch up. They feel this is an impossible task, to expect them to catch up whatever skills have been lost. Now, what I want you to see on this specific slide is the two issues here, the one versus the other one. How are we going to resolve these issues? And maybe you can start thinking about these, the way in which we can intervene here. What sort of advice can we give? How can we make sure that we can resolve these issues so that we can plan together to have the desired outcome, which is excellence in teaching and learning? So the scenario goes on, and we hear that the foundation phase teachers are also saying, but they have their own backlog. So when they come into grade 1, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, these little ones haven't been exposed to ECD. So the basic skills are not there, and they don't have the time to actually address these skills. And while I'm speaking to you about this, colleagues, I'm just thinking of the impact that COVID has had on this and similar scenarios, where we have actually taken children out of school for periods of time, whether we have been rotating specific groups of children, and where we have cut or reduced the contact time with around about 50%. So you can see here that although this is a case study, this is the reality that you and I are faced with in 2021. So as we indicated, this is what we want to do. We want to see how can we look at these two feedback issues and what are the suggested actions. So these gaps that we have, that the InterCEN teachers have identified. In grade 4, there's no independent learning. And I'm sure even up into the secondary school, you have learners who really can't study independently. And then the basic phonics in grade 4. So, excuse me, some of the possible actions, and please note that these are not prescriptive, we could suggest to the grade 3 and 4 teachers to collaborate. Why? Because when they are collaborating, they can find ways to facilitate independent learning in a scaffolded way, starting in grade 3. So there is not such a big jump when these learners are coming into grade 4. And if we think of the grades from grade 3 and 4 upwards, this is a very similar situation that many teachers are experiencing. The children will sit and stare at you because they are expecting you to actually feed them with the information. A possible suggestion. Another one. They can plan together. How can we close these gaps? If we are a team and we sit and plan together, we have the curriculum for grade 3 and we have the curriculum for grade 4. And we are not working in silos. But is this happening in schools? I'm wondering. Because I often feel people get very offended if you are extending a hand to say, let's plan together. But if we understand what we are aiming to achieve, this will make sense. Together, we can fill the gaps between grade 3 and 4. For the purpose of the secondary school staff who are on board this afternoon, you can now see we're back here where there's pressure to say you have to get them ready. I've actually had phone calls from the primary school principal saying good luck with this year's grade 7 class. And that really upset me because in essence, we are not competing. We are in this together. So how can we resolve this issue? Because I really feel this is a common challenge. And this can affect the relationships between the primary and the secondary school. Because there's something of a superiority feeling here when I say, will you please make sure that you prepare them for grade 8? We don't want to battle with that when they get here. So once again, a suggested action would be, say to the InterCEN teachers, let's have a joint meeting with the secondary school teachers. Because remember, grade 7 is part of the senior phase. And it becomes a problem because they are now with the InterCEN in the primary school. So let's rather jointly look at specific areas where there's a need for development, because we are sharing a common goal. We are not on opposing sides. And I just feel if the grade 8 teacher has had the opportunity to teach grade 12 as well, that teacher can give us that vision where we are taking these children when we are meeting the grade 7 teachers. Colleagues, I think you can see from this specific scenario, there is no place for us versus them. So the key word here is collaboration. And to collaborate, we need to do it jointly. And because we can't do it in person nowadays, we can do it virtually. But there's no excuse for a situation like this to actually persist. There is a way of solving it. So in both these cases, we have seen that it's all about collaboration. It's all about identifying what intervention is needed. How can we plan around this for all groups involved? Once we've planned, then we need to go into the action. And the action is going to be the teaching. And once we've taught, there's going to be an evaluation or an assessment. And you can see we are back where we started this afternoon with our cycle. And that brings me to a very interesting quote. A very senior history teacher, David Cutler, made this comment. And he says, in a mistaken attempt to prove my worth, I would correct every misspelling, every grammatical flaw and analytical misstep. So you can imagine the result. The child's work would be drenched in red. It looks like a war zone. And now students are coming and they are accusing me of caring more about pointing out flaws than helping them improve. They were right. Now, my question to you this afternoon, is this where you are? Let's take it a step further. Is this what the department head is looking for? Ma'am, but you didn't see that the date was spelled incorrectly or the month was spelled incorrectly. And that's why, with this in the back of our minds, Cutler says sometimes it's best to let learners figure out and learn from their own mistakes. Whatever Cutler has said up there it's well meant, well intended. But can you see that it hinders the learning? And that's why I would like to take this one step further and say, what is the school subject policies or the phase policies saying about this? Because can you see it has to be addressed right there, colleagues? If you point out the same blunder over and over again, it's best to stop. If the child has made the same mistake throughout the assignment and you've indicated it in the first line, stop there. Because by correcting it repeatedly, what are you achieving? Rather highlight that part of the sentence or the paragraph where the mistake was made again and ask the learner to think about what needs to be done. Let's have faith in our children. Let's stop dumbing them down to 30%. And let's give them more responsibility for their own learning, because this is where quality assurance starts. In the classroom with the child. And that brings us to benefits of feedback for the learning process. It forms an integral part, as we've seen, of that cycle in education. So if feedback is based on specific criteria, and if we implement it progressively, then it'll be developmental. Then it'll support learning, because we are going to be planning it on different levels. And can you see the one thing that Kara Asmal has taught us? Lifelong learning. Otherwise, we are not going to teach them to fish. We will frequently be fishing on their behalf, and they will die of hunger. We are talking about the benefits of feedback for learning. Breakfast is called the most important meal of the day. And for a good reason. I'm sure the English teachers will know you are breaking the fast. Breaking the overnight period. And what's important for me is if we see feedback as the breakfast of champions, then we will understand a champion actually needs this healthy breakfast to be able to excel. Think of the Comrades Marathon. Think of the soccer player. Think of all those sports people who start the day with a healthy breakfast, providing all the essential nutrients. And if we use this metaphor when we talk about feedback, we will understand why it is of the utmost importance. Now, I see for the next slide, it's popped in there, but benefits for the learner. We've spoken about benefits for the learning process. If we talk about the learner, research has confirmed in recent years what we as teachers already knew. Providing students with meaningful feedback can greatly enhance their learning and their achievement. And that's why you see it helps to develop self-awareness. It gives them the information about the new areas of learning. If this does not happen, children become demotivated because they lose interest. I'm sure many of you have seen the video clip where the lady says, every learner needs a champion. Every child needs a champion. If the child gets 2, he didn't get everything wrong. He got 2. But if he keeps on getting to do 2 without knowing how to actually develop himself, to refrain from getting 2 and to actually start growing towards the outcome, that child is going to drop out by the time they get to grade 9. So we need to help our children remain committed to the learning task by providing them constructive, effective feedback. And can you see, it helps to build solid relationships. I'm sure all of you have realized that when you don't get something right, you're going to try again. And those of us who are really driven will try until we excel, until we achieve. But if you frequently bump your head, it's very easy to become demotivated. There's a professor at the University of Texas who has actually been researching the benefits of frequent testing and feedback and what it actually results in. And he has the following to say. When people are trying to learn new skills, they must get some information that tells them whether or not they are doing the right thing. Learning in the classroom is no exception. Please listen to the following. Both the mastery of content and, more importantly, the mastery of how to think require trial and error learning. I can still remember when I started teaching how I went about the trial and error process. But I was motivated. I wanted to excel. I wanted to succeed. So can you see why we need to help the child to understand? It's not just a red mark on the paper. And I think many teachers actually stop there. We grade, we return, and we are done. We give them the memorandum. Do the children really understand where they went wrong? Are we helping them to identify areas for personal development? Can you see what I'm saying? I don't want us just to get stuck in a process where we are so pressurized to submit marks that we are just marking and this is where it stops. We are not taking it a step further. I often think that many teachers actually don't get as far as data analysis. Once they've marked and they've returned, they are done. But do I reflect on my own teaching by looking at the graph on Excel to see what went wrong? Which question? Feedback allows our learners to feel valued because remember the gift, I am giving them something of myself. And we're going to finish off this afternoon with a short video clip where you're going to see this in action. I'm talking about serious time management here, colleagues. Because if you want to have a child feel valued and you want to encourage them to strive for greater achievement, it's not good enough to say poor or well done, unfortunately. We need a lot more than that. We are talking about feedback to the learner and the benefits this has. It's easy to complain about learners' work ethic. I often had teachers complaining about the children don't have any work ethic, they hand in rubbish. So do you mock the rubbish? Or do you interact with this child and explain that it is reflecting on you as a person? I am giving you a sense of responsibility for what you are handing in. Because then I am giving them feedback. Then I am working on their own development. As I said, just to say great job might help the child to feel good. Poor, yeah, that won't give me any insight into what I've done wrong and how I can improve on it. So let's rather take time. Can you see? We talk about goal focused with specific targets. We need to help our children understand exactly what did they do well, what still needs improvement, so that this can be helpful when the child does this again. They will know how to go about it differently. Because remember, the child is an integral part of this process. The child is not just the passive recipient of a graded task or task. And once we've established this relationship that we spoke about earlier on, I will find my child asking for help when he or she needs it, because they know there's empathy. They know I'm not just going to say, are you stupid? You didn't listen in class. I'm going to take it one step further because I'm focusing on my child. I'm giving you a sense of responsibility for your work. Maybe this is what we've been doing wrong for many years. We have taken responsibility for children's poor achievement. And that's why parents are fighting us, because we have created the impression that we have marked and we've just returned. And now the parent is fighting me. It's a relationship. And dare I say that the parent is part of that relationship. So how are we getting the parents involved? This next quote really gives us food for thought. Because you and I prepare for hours. How much time do we spend preparing for feedback? And if we hear that they need endless feedback more than they need endless teaching, we need to stop and think. So if we look at feedback for the teacher, what's important is for us to know that we need to set targets. We need to give them a forum where we can show them the value of their work, because that will motivate them. But if I'm just returning it with a negative comment and a war zone, I'm not being helpful. I'm not focusing on the improvement rather than the deficiencies, because isn't that what we are looking for when we are marking? We are looking for the wrong answers. Maybe we should start focusing on how can we change the wrong answers. And that can be done if we are not judgmental. If we are approaching our children's work knowing that we can reflect on the ways they can improve. But can you see, you need to know about strategies and actions. Do you know how to guide learners to improve their work? So there are many, many options that you can explore. The one I'm going to show you is a writing feedback tracker. But before we get there, if you look at this, can you see that even in your class time, you can prepare to set time aside where you're going to guide the learners on how to revise your work, how to edit your own work. Can I appeal to you to please spend time on compiling proper rubrics, because a rubric is such a brilliant tool, because the child can actually see, this is where I am, but this is where I'm supposed to be. You can also now, with all the virtual platforms to our availability, you can actually compose a little video clip on one of the problems that you are experiencing in the task or in the test. You know why? Because these children can then go back to that little video clip. You send it to them on the WhatsApp class group. Stop thinking that everything happens in the classroom. We can't repeat the same thing over and over again and expect to have a different result. So I spoke about the feedback tracker. And what happens here? Can you see what happens? And what is the assignment? What was the feedback? And what is the goal for the future? And I'm just highlighting one because I'm a language teacher and this has been a problem for many years. Children don't add the author when they are providing us with a response to a specific question in literature or in poetry. So the goal for the future is to always add the title and the author in my topic sentence. And you can go through the rest yourself. But I think what is really important, can you see, we are guiding them. And that's why it's important to look at the teacher's role here. Sharing my knowledge. This is an old social sciences one, but once again, if you look at this, if I know, and we have more levels now, but just to explain to you, if we talk about the focus of this specific presentation, it was a poster that had to be done for social sciences. Now the child sees poor topic formulation and no coherence. Now, I don't know whether a grade 7 child will know about coherence. So please don't use the department rubrics as they are. Adapt them, contextualize them for your children. But now the child can actually see, if I want to get 80%, I need to formulate my topic clearly and I need to state very clearly exactly what this poster is all about. And these are the things that we are working with colleagues, but we need to understand how we can utilize them. I would start by explaining this rubric to my children before I actually do the specific task. Explain to them what these specific level indicators mean. Because then I am actually saving time. So for the teacher, I am going to need the information from the feedback to help me plan for the future. And as I said, I then need to know what are the successful methodologies out there. And how can I adapt my unsuccessful ones? And as we saw just now from that quote, the unsuccessful one is having a red paper where all the mistakes have been highlighted for the child. Because if I look at this, my role as teacher is to improve my instruction. In other words, I need to make evaluative statements. And this is specifically important for the school management, and I'm thinking of the department head here. To work collaboratively with the teachers, to talk about lessons, to talk about the instructional strategies that have been used and the impact on the students. I often wonder what people are looking at when they are doing class visit. Isn't it similar to marking a child's essay? Because teachers can diagnose their teaching themselves. They will know how to refine and strengthen it, but it requires a trusting climate. Can you see here? For this personal professional development to happen for the teacher, I need to trust my superiors. The moment I fear my department head, can you imagine? I'm not going to share. And that's why I always loved it when those newly appointed teachers would come into the office and say, "Ma'am, you've been in this business for so long. What would you have done if?" Because that's why we are there. So let's look at a tool that could be used. We are not going to say you did a really good job of asking questions, because what value is this adding to the teacher's lesson? The teacher's going to feel good. But if I start and I say, discuss the questioning strategies that you use to engage your students. What contributed to their success? What evidence did you gather from students during your lesson? Can you see how we're changing the emphasis from a feel good to really adding value for the future? And the same is applicable to the bottom one. The area you need to work on is shifting ownership to students. You are doing too much yourself. Noted, ma'am, thank you. But if we move and we say, what I saw during the lessons, talk to me about new strategies that you could use to allow for ownership in your classroom. I'd really like to follow up with you to see how it goes. There's a huge change in approach. This is part of feedback, and it starts right there, where the teacher knows that they have been successful or not. So after looking at the different aspects, the learning, the learner, and the teacher, let's see what are the characteristics of effective feedback. It has to be specific, accurate, clear. So we can't just say it was good. It was good because. Not correct. What must they do in future if they have the end goal in mind? And you're going to see the clip talks about feed up. There's a final goal that we have in mind. And it's no good. And I'm sure that you have a specific turnaround time in your class. It has to be very soon after the task had been done, because then it can be constructive. The measures of effectiveness, the MOEs, assesses the changes in the learner's behavior. So you can see it's personalized. There's no one size fits all with feedback, colleagues, because children are different. And even the top achiever needs feedback. So I need to make sure that it's delivered in a realistic context and it's manageable. And this is why we need to go out there and see what tools can we use within the classroom. And feedback should be recorded. How else are you going to prove to the parents during a parents' evening that you have attempted to intervene? And that's why if we are looking at learning, this is used formatively. We are using it to inform our learning process and to give my child in my class the best opportunities to learn and grow and address their challenges. And this we can do by using a checklist. You know, I always had a little one to say, did you do this heading? Is it dated? Did you use paragraphs? This can be pasted into the book. It's proof. And the child is taking responsibility for their own work. So here we have quite a few options to actually shift and have involvement from many of the stakeholders. It's effective where people are comfortable making mistakes, whether it's the department head in the teacher's class or the child in the teacher's class. I am leading towards future learning. And if children perceive that there's a personal risk to responding in the class, what are they going to do? They're going to be quiet, or they're going to reject. So we're going to teach them error detection strategies so that they can take responsibility. And can you see here, we base it on strong developmental points. But this is going to require that the teacher is involved, aware. You see, often in subjects, we use the marking symbols, new paragraph, capital letter, etc. Do the children know what these marking symbols and codes are for? Are we sharing it with them? As I said, give the rubric, give these symbols to the children in advance at the beginning of the year. It shouldn't be a surprise. I always believe that the children should have the curriculum for the whole year at the beginning of the year so that they know when are we going to do what. And the bright child will start preparing in advance. And a quiz online is amazing because the moment they say submit, it pops up on your side. So can you see we are saving time? Or else we can do role modeling, especially in the social sciences. This works very well. Can you imagine if the children are role modeling election? And they're going to understand those concepts a lot easier. So when we are feeding back of learning, it's clear. It's like assessment. It's done after a test, after an exam, at the end of a unit. Because this is playing a role in addressing my future planning, designing new programs, providing a record, and doing quality assurance in the delivery of my curriculum. To take it one step further, you can see here, it could be presented in a set of marks. And we can then share that. We've looked at the rubric. So when we look at the first one here, we are transparent about expectations and achievements. So we don't want to make a laughing stock out of the child who's not been able to answer the question. But we are alerting the children to the fact that this is wrong and this is the reason why it's wrong. Tell me why it's wrong. And we've actually looked at the rubrics helping teachers to authentically monitor learners' learning process. So it's all about focusing on data-driven feedback. It's not about just improving, but innovating. Because that, colleagues, is what quality assurance is. And can you see here? We are often just giving them a report. But are we giving written comments as well on the school reports? Is there a summary of results for each grade? Not just the one going to the district office. Because remember, the principal has to give us feedback on the achievements of the children. Having said that, we're going to listen to a very short video.
Research has shown that giving good feedback to students is one of the most powerful ways teachers can improve learning. Feedback allows students to know where and how they can improve by allowing them to confirm, correct, fine-tune or restructure their knowledge or beliefs. Effective feedback can also boost students' motivation to improve and can help them to develop more effective learning strategies and skills, such as self-regulation, goal setting, task planning, monitoring and reflection. There are 3 stages to feedback. Feed up, making the learning goals clear to students. Feedback, monitoring and assessing students' progress towards the goal. And feed forward, giving students direction on where to go next in their learning. Feedback operates on 3 different levels. Task level or product feedback, which focuses on students' performance on a task. Task level feedback is best provided immediately after a student completes an activity. For example, that's correct. Could you include more information about why Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia? While important, task level feedback is not the most powerful type of feedback because students typically cannot use the information to improve other tasks. Process level feedback looks at how a student has completed a task. It fosters a deeper understanding of how we learn, and students should be able to transfer these learning strategies to other tasks. An example of process level feedback is, you might find it easier to punctuate your writing if you read it aloud to a partner. It's best to wait some time after the task before giving process level feedback, as students are more likely to be able to reflect on their learning. Personal level feedback is directed to the individual and is not task related. For example, that's an intelligent response. Well done. It is the least effective level of feedback, as it directs attention away from the task and learning, and research suggests that feedback that focuses on the self can result in students fearing making mistakes. Here are some tips on how to give better feedback. Reduce the number of pieces of work you assess so you can focus on providing high-quality feedback. Avoid value judgments or advice, just report on what is being assessed. Create an environment that welcomes errors and corrective feedback. Attribute success to effort in order to increase motivation. For more information and practical examples of how you can improve feedback in your classroom, check out the resources on our website.
So what we saw here was that we are helping learners if we use feed up, that's our goal. Feed forward, outlining the steps in the learning process, and feedback, which we have been talking about this afternoon, because we are helping them to confirm, correct, and fine-tune what they already know. But we are also looking at the 3 levels, and we are cautioning you to use the personal level. So those comments that well done, poor, this can be a problem because it's not really helping the qualitative process that we have spoken about. So in essence, what we saw in the video clip was the different ways in which we can give feedback, the hints, and that brings me to the best kind of feedback. And you can see here, it's all about planning. How are we going to go about this? And then the ways that we should try and avoid. And most of us, if we read through the list, I'm sure you're going to stop either with number 1 or number 2. The purpose of feedback in the learning process is to improve a student's performance, not to put a damper on it. And you can see that we want to provide our students with the I can do this, because as South Africans, isn't this exactly what the Rainbow Nation says? We are South Africans, I cans. I'm going to hand over to Alet to help us with the administrative process, but I do hope that you can reflect on what we did this afternoon, colleagues, and take some time to think how you can improve what you are doing in your practice in your school. Alet, over to you.
Thank you, Almarie, for a very insightful session. We will now allow time for questions. I see there's one hand up. Let me just go back. Nikeswa, do you want to ask a question? You're welcome to. Oh, no, anymore. Okay, so I don't see any questions. Let me just end off. Oh, there we have a few questions. Okay. Okay. Nfelwani, can you ask your question? You can unmute yourself. And Patricia, you can also unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yes, hello?
Okay, great.
Yes,
Yes.
we can
Hello?
hear.
Let's go from Nfelwani
Can you hear me
first.
now?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
do.
Yes. Yes. What must I do when I find that when I'm giving feedback to my learner, again, somewhere, somehow, they repeat the very same mistakes that they have done, maybe through assessment or formative assessment or informal assessment? What advice?
Can I just ask, and you don't have to respond, these are just reflective questions to your question. Have you had the opportunity to interact on a one-on-one basis? Because often, I'm not too sure what type of feedback was provided to the learner. But, you know, by just making a comment on the piece of work, I'm not going to necessarily get something different in the next test. So it's really important to have that relationship that we refer to in the training, to call the child aside, and specifically if you have 2 copies where the same mistakes have been made, you know, then it really gives you the tools to say, let's look at what you have done. You've done it there, you've done it here again. How can I help you? That's the first question we ask, because there might be other issues that we are not aware of. So my response to that is refrain from writing feedback on the child's documents. Let's get them involved. And that's why I said earlier on, it's going to require time management, because we need to now look at how we're going to address these individual cases that are coming to us. I hope I'm not going to resolve the issue for you, but I'm just guiding you to say there are ways that we should stay clear from. And those are the ones where we are just merely writing feedback on the learner's work. I hope that helped a little bit.
Thank you. Patricia, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, and then we'll go to Louise. Patricia? Okay, let me go to Louise. I've unmuted you, so you can just, yes, you can ask your question. Louise, do you have a question for us? Okay, no response there. Let me just see if we have any other hands up. And then we have, is it Ernest? Ernest, do you want to ask a question? I've unmuted you, so if you unmute yourself, then you can ask your question. Ernest? Okay, last person, let's try Fiona. Fiona, you can just unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working.
Maybe people are not comfortable with the platform. That's no problem.
Maybe, yeah, the unmute. Okay, so
yes, am I audible now?
oh yes, now you are. Yeah.
Am I?
Yes, or
That
Ernest,
is
we
Okay,
can hear you.
thank you very
Yes.
much.
Just keep it brief.
Yeah, mine, pardon?
And just keep it brief,
Mine
please.
is not okay. Yeah, mine is not that that much of what you've presented. I was very much interested in this, although I joined a bit late because of some other commitments. But I just wanted to know, because this information is very, very important. Is there a way of getting this presentation?
This is the
The way
perfect
of
time.
sharing this with?
This is the perfect time for your question, because I was just about to say that after this workshop, by Monday, you can receive an email from us where we will give you a form that you will kindly give us some feedback, and then also a link to where you can watch this on our online channel. So if you want to share it with colleagues
No,
as
that's
well, you
wonderful,
can do
because
that.
yeah, you keep on breaking. Okay, no, thank you very much.
Okay,
But you
Ernest.
got the message.
So I just want to thank everyone for your participation or your attending this good webinar this afternoon, and I hope you have a wonderful day further. Bye.
We hope this is not the last one. Thank you.
Yes, Alet from my side as well. Thank you very much for Macmillan Teacher
Thank
Campus.
you.
It was great presenting it, and I really do hope that we inspire teachers not to go back to the war zone and to think out of the box and be innovative. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Almarie, and everyone else. Enjoy your afternoon. Bye.